Over 5,000 years before Christ, an amazing thing happened that would change the course of human history. Hidden from us by misunderstanding, mistranslation, and clouded in mythology, the birth of religion on this planet was no mere accident. It was the result of an alien invasion on a vast scale, and it sparked the worship of the ancient gods. Those gods are the oldest recorded figures of worship anywhere in history. They are the root of all the major world religions. They gave rise to the great powers of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and more. They spread outwards around the world and were the genesis of a special holy bloodline that remains with us today. One of their descendants would be caught, beaten, and crucified. And yet he would rise from his grave unrecognizable and accompanied by messengers of light. He would ascend in the sky having cast off his shrouded skin. His bloodline would give rise to the royal families of the entire world. His bloodline would be protected, defended, and would control the globe. He was a descendant of the great serpent elite who came to Earth as beings of light to teach mankind. He was a descendant of the great giant killer David, a memory of a great battle that was fought between the serpent elite and the sons of alien and man. They were known as giants in the land. The aliens escaped Earth, but left behind their seed and tools of power and communication. It is prophesied that they shall return, and the signs are growing daily that they have returned, and are right now dealing with their own elite bloodline, the men in power. This is the untold story of a very real and ancient alien invasion. In Africa today, there are the remains of the oldest form of worship anywhere on the planet. It is a cave in the shape of a huge serpent. All around there are pieces of stone fashioned into thousands of small scales. This is the place of worship for the serpent. This is where man first came into contact with the aliens. The discovery of this one location surprised the world. Nobody expected original worship to be that of the serpent, and yet it is within every single religion. It is in all the myths of the world, and they all tell the same story. In the beginning, the serpent was the wise one, the only animal in the Bible to speak freely with his own mind and voice. The tempter, and yet also the holder of ultimate wisdom and the elixir of life. Mankind, in comparison to this remarkable animal, appeared foolish. From that day forward, the serpent would control man. The very genetic makeup of mankind altered from this moment. We cannot say exactly when. We cannot pinpoint the so-called Garden of Eden in time, but we can piece together the remarkable story of the moment the serpent aliens came from the skies. We can uncover the story of what happened next and how it has affected our own time. The truth is, aliens do walk among us right now. To many, the very idea that the serpent is hidden within our religions and mythology will seem bizarre. In Christianity and other faiths, it is reviled, and this itself is a folk memory of a fearful and warring past between mankind and the serpent. Nevertheless, the historical truth is that the serpent is there, and it is the root of all major religions. This has been proven again and again, both from scriptures and archaeology. The following information is vital to our understanding of this history, for it helps us to uncover the origin and role of this ancient invasion. This is a journey across time and space to unlock and reveal the hidden serpent race. The easiest and most clear way to realize that the serpent is hidden in our lives is to actually understand the language of the serpent itself. We need to get to the roots. The snake is known in the language of Canaan as Ab, Ob, Oph, Op, Eph, and Ev. Amazingly, in the Mayan language, can means serpent, as in Kukulkan, the bird serpent. And just as in the ancient Sumerian Akan, and the Scottish can for serpent, which is where we get the word canny, like the wise snake. Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, comes from the Babylonian Can for serpent and Vul for fire, showing an etymological link across thousands of miles. The aspect of fire being included in the word is a clue to the origins of the serpent and its worship, for the ancients came with fire. There are no real snakes on Earth that are also fire, and so it must mean something quite different. Perhaps similar to that fire or light seen in the modern-day UFO sightings. At the very center of the Christian world, the Vatican, comes from the words vatus for prophet and can for serpent, making the Vatican a place of serpent prophecy. The very book of Christians across the world, the Bible, is full of the serpent, and its inclusion is very interesting, for it reveals how the serpent was seen. The oracle of King Saul was called one that hath Ob, or the priestess of Ob, a word that means serpent. The serpent worshippers of Moses' time and era were known as Hivites, derived from Hivia or serpent, the root of Eve. Hivites became Ophites, the early Christian Gnostic serpent worshippers who claimed affinity with the Christians in the 2nd century AD. Indeed, the very children of Israel intermarried with them and served their gods. This is very revealing stuff, intermarriage and worship of the serpent gods. Today we can easily replace the word gods with aliens. They were also known as Baalim, from the god Baal. Baal was an abbreviation of Ob-El, the serpent god, or shining serpent. The shining aspect of the serpent reveals a subtle clue. The serpent was indeed seen in the sky and shone down upon us. This is why in Egypt, for instance, we will see the sun or Aten wrapped with a snake, and why the serpent was worldwide seen as a symbol of the sun. It was these shining ones, or serpents, which were the lights in the sky that descended to earth. They were the lights that our ancestors saw in the sky, the sun, moon, and stars. But these lights came down to earth and settled amongst us. The lights were the ships, the craft of the strange, serpent-like humanoids that stepped off and walked among mankind. The Greeks called Baal Beliar, which means a dragon or great serpent. Baal is the Assyrio-Babylonian version of the gods Enlil and Marduk, the same Baal seen throughout the Bible. So the Baal in the Bible is a Babylonian serpent god, one of the ancient lights of wisdom that descended to earth. The European Beltane should be rendered Baltan, both words signifying the dragon or serpent. In fact, Tanit was the patron goddess of Carthage in northern Africa, who was also associated with the Tree of Life, like Ishtar and Astarte, and she definitely crossed cultures into Europe, becoming the root of the word Easter. The name Tanit means serpent lady, and she is found on many coins in Carthage associated with the caduceus and symbolizing the role of Tanit in life, death, and rebirth. She is basically the same as the Queen of Heaven, Astarte, Isis, and Mary. All of these deities and names go back to Babylonian beliefs of serpent worship, which in turn goes across to Egypt and Mesopotamia in general towards the African ancient serpent cults. The very place that the original Shining Ones descended to Earth and began their teaching of mankind. Christianity, then, is related to the most ancient serpent worship known, and if it were not for the destructive covering up of huge amounts of historical data by the Christians, then this would have been all the more obvious. It is a fact that the Christians were ashamed of this link and did all they could to destroy it, not least because it would reveal their own deity to be of serpent origin itself. Years later, as we shall see, the serpent bloodline would emerge again in the line of the Merovingians, and again the Christians would fight a battle to subdue them. A general term for early Christian Gnostics was Ophites, which means serpent worshippers. It was this group that wrote the New Testament. Epiphanius said, "The Ophites sprung out of the Nicolaitans and Gnostics, and were so called from the serpent which they worshipped." They taught that the ruler of this world was of a draconic form, and the Ophites attribute all wisdom to the serpent of paradise, and say that he was the author of knowledge of men. An amazing declaration which speaks volumes. The guardians of the very history and religion that would become Christianity was in fact based on and fostered by those who worshipped the ancient wise serpent that came and taught mankind. The ruler of this world was of draconic form. It was the dragon, the winged serpent, the shining serpent that could fly. It was ultimately wise and should be worshipped as a god. As if in memory of the power of the serpent bloodline, the blood itself was symbolically ingested. A ritual cup was used, known as the cup of the Agathodaimon, meaning simply good serpent. This serpent-consecrated cup of wine was handed around after supper, just like at the Last Supper of Christ, and was received with much shouting and joyousness. The hymn sung via the serpent to the Supreme Father was just the same as the one sung in the memory of the Python at Delphi on the seventh day of the week. Now, thousands of years later, Christians still take the cup of Christ, who was called the Good Serpent by the Gnostics. This modern ritual is none other than the original, but renamed, Cup of the Sacred Serpent, which gives the body and blood of our oldest god, the body and blood of the ancient serpent race. A 3rd century Persian teacher known as Manas, who said that Christianity had got things wrong and he was here to put it right, attempted to revive these old ways. Regardless of the Christian attempts to kill off Manichaeism, it survived until the 13th century. He is said to have revived Ophiolatreia, or serpent worship, where he taught that Christ was an incarnation of the great serpent, who glided over the cradle of the Virgin Mary when she was asleep at the age of 1.5 years. But the worship of the serpent was much more ancient than even Manus stated. In Britain, the serpent god was Hugh, the dragon ruler of the world, a statement remarkably similar to that of the Ophites. The druid was known as a natter, now known as an adder. And as the adder was the symbol of the god Hugh, the druids were Ophites of the original stock. They worshipped also Beli or Baal, so in this respect, the druids were probably the last truly serpent-worshipping priests in Europe. A remnant of ancient days, long forgotten but remembered in words and deeds. According to Herodotus, a sacred serpent was fed honey cakes once a month at the Acropolis in Athens. These honey cakes were marked with the omphalos. The superstition of the omphalos was widespread, like the serpent, belief from India to Greece. It is a boss or orb with spiral lines thought to represent serpents coiled. There are similar markings on ancient stone monuments across the world. To the Etruscans of ancient Italy, the omphalos was seen as a route to another world. It was placed in a trench called a mundus, and the first fruits offered into the trench, which was then covered by a huge stone. The entire city was centered on the spot, with all roads leading to and from it. This is a remnant of the idea that the serpent race came from another world, and the omphalos, a representation of the devices used for travel. Probably the most famous omphalos is the one now in the museum at Delphi. In Greek history, the Delphic oracle was called Pytho, or Python the snake, and she was active for over 1,000 years, getting involved in anything from mundane day-to-day prophecies to matters of state. As throughout the history of the mystical serpent, it has been associated with powers of future sight, known to us today as precognition. An indication that the serpent is associated strongly with prophecy is the stark fact that the words for divination in Hebrew, Arabic, and Greek all mean serpent. This alone indicates that Hebrew, Arabic, and Greek are following the same beliefs over a vast period of time. According to Ferguson, the 19th century writer, when we first meet with serpent worship, either in the wilderness of Sinai, the groves of Epidaurus, or in the Sarmatian huts, the serpent is always the Agathodamon, which in ancient Egypt presided over the affairs of men as the guardian spirit of their houses, was the asp of Rano, the snake-headed goddess who is represented as nursing the young princes. That the idea of health was intimately associated with the serpent is shown by the crown formed of the asp, or sacred thermothos, having been given particularly to Isis, a goddess of life and healing, and according to Hargrave Jennings and Ophiolotrea, these were no doubt intended to symbolize eternal life. This is revealing, for one thing that is definitely associated with these original serpents is eternal life. To mankind, these serpents appeared to live forever. They outlived man. They also were great healers and were said to be able to cure man of his ills. In The Serpent and Siva Worship, C. Stanley Wake remarks about the Muslim saint of Upper Egypt is still thought to appear under the form of a serpent and to cure the diseases which afflict the pilgrims of his shrine. In the same book, we hear of one of the 4 idols of Madagascar whose emissaries are serpents. He is regarded as a physician and thought to expel epidemic diseases much akin to the Greek serpent deity Aesculapius. This is a very revealing paragraph, for it gives us insight into the amazing power and technology that these serpent beings possessed. As God, sacred, powerful, and almighty, who kills and makes alive, who heals the sick and prevents diseases and pestilence, who can cause thunder and lightning to strike their victims or prevent their fatality, can cause rain in abundance when wanted, or can withhold it so as to ruin the crops of rice. He is also celebrated for his knowledge of the past and future, and for his capacity of discovering whatever is healed or concealed. Ramahavali has basically all the elements of the Agathodamon, the sacred serpent, in one god. He is like many other serpent deities in charge of the weather. He has knowledge and wisdom, and above all, he can heal, resurrect, and disperse disease. These are all elements that thousands of people across the world have said are within the power of aliens. In Islam, the snake is always seen as being closely associated with life. In fact, the word el-haya, meaning snake, is close to el-hayat, meaning the life-giving principle. The Prophet Muhammad is said to have spoken of the strange and powerful angelic beings known as jinn, from where we get genie, as being of three kinds, one of which was as a serpent. Indeed, the white jinn are said to be formed from the irises of the serpent, Sakatamuna's eyes. The king of the jinn was Jamshid, who just happens to be famous for having a beautiful cup of elixir. The resplendent Jam, as he was known, was the first to organize society and was one of the first legendary rulers of Persia. Wine and sugar were made for the first time. He was the first to construct roads and build ships. During his long reign, Jamshid received a warning that in 3 severe winters, heavy snowfalls would cover the earth, and all creation would be destroyed, very much like the flood of Noah. Jamshid followed the divine order and constructed a var, which is a fortress into which he took the best men, women, animals, and plants to reproduce and replenish the earth after the snows had melted. His reign was remembered for its great prosperity, but also his pride. He became a sinner, and he was defeated and killed by the serpent king Zohak. A later king of this dynasty, Feridun, in turn killed the serpent king. Feridun is also credited with the discovery of the art of medicine and healing. The whole story of Zohak and Jamshid is the struggle between the culture of Persia and the invading ancient serpent race from Syria, which was seen as the evil. It is the story of powerful ancient serpent rulers who came to Earth, taught mankind, mated with humans, and eventually fell into a situation of war with their offspring. The exact same story we find in Sumeria, Egypt, the Bible, and numerous other cultures around the globe, a memory of an ancient invasion before recorded history. We must now move on to the mythical progenitors of the whole of the human race, a story of 2 people created by the god of ancient times to populate the earth, a hybrid species, part god and part of the earth itself. Remarkably, the origin is found to be related to serpent worship from their Sumerian origins. The word Hevia is the root of Eve and means female serpent. It is connected to the same Arabic root which means both life and serpent. The Persians even call the constellation Serpens the little Ava or Eve. In Old Akkadian, Ad signifies father, and Adam was closely associated in legend with Seth, Saturn, and Thoth, who were all associated strongly as serpents. Abel, the son of Adam and Eve, means serpent shining, and Cain was thought to be of serpent descent simply because he was. The other and important point to note is that Adam and Eve were initially immortal, and Eve gained her wisdom via the serpent on the tree of knowledge and life. According to rabbinical tradition, Cain was not the son of Adam at all, but rather the son of Asmodeus, the serpent spirit. In conclusion, Adam and Eve and even their sons are serpents. The very so-called origin of humanity is in fact based upon those Sumerian shining ones that came from the sky in the form of serpents. The origin of humanity is from the line of serpents. American indigenous people call the snake Anita Wahe, or supernatural. It holds a high place in their worship because it is magical. It controls the rain and thunder, has dominance over other animals and plants. It is no different to the serpent in other parts of the world. Why would this be? In a world where historians tell us these cultures never met, that they could not be related in any way, and yet the belief systems are the same. There is, in fact, a clue, a big clue, in the tales, and it reveals the origin of these serpent beliefs. The rattlesnake was, according to legend, once a man, alluding to the ancient incoming serpent race of antiquity. This man was transformed into a rattlesnake in order to bring salvation to the human race and save him. Yet again, it is the savior of mankind. Even the Cherokee Indians are afraid of killing the rattlesnake and will ask for pardon from the snake's ghost should they do so. There is even a tradition that if the snake is hung on a tree for 3 days, it will bring rain. Remarkably similar to the Christian tale, and even a link with Yahweh, the rain god. These are the same because these are the same serpent deities influencing society across the globe. In mankind's efforts to mimic their ancient deities, they began a peculiar tradition: circumcision. There are wall carvings in Egypt showing circumcision being practiced. The Egyptians held the belief that when the snake shed its skin, it had undergone rebirth. It was symbolic of attaining new life, of being born again. It was a mirror of their greatest god. The Egyptian priest, in a mock ritual of the serpent shedding his skin, therefore removed the foreskin of the male, and so the male was born again like the snake. This practice then spread to the Semitic peoples, Arabs and Jews in later times, most probably via the emerging worshippers of the serpent elite. The fact is, this practice goes back to ancient Sumeria, the home of the original serpent shining ones who came down from the sky, the home of the ancient watchers. The original home of the angels of the Bible, who were shining messengers of the gods and whose visage was that of the serpent. There is no denying that all the records we have of these shining ones record them as having descended from the heavens, to be incredibly wise and powerful, to have set up a special guardian race called the Watchers, who then went on to mate with humanity and create a hybrid race. That hybrid race is known across the world in folklore as the Giants. History tells us quite simply that this was a crime, and the original aliens, the Shining Ones, did battle with the giants and brought about a great cataclysm. This is not science fiction. This is the recorded history ignored by historians because it does not conform to their own belief systems. The Panchatantra are 5 books of animal and magical tales and one of India's most influential contributions to world culture. Said to have been compiled between the 3rd and 5th century AD, however it is believed, not without reason, that they were already very ancient by then. These stories substantially influenced Western Europe via Arabic translations and oral trade. In it, we can see the links between the Brahmin culture and the idea of serpent descent for the royal families. Devasarman, a Brahmin, had a childless wife who wept constantly for children. This indicates the sterile nature of the Brahmin at this age. One day, Devasarman said to his wife, "Stop your grieving. Behold, I was offering a sacrifice for the birth of a son when an invisible being said to me in the clearest words, Brahman, you shall be granted this son, and he shall surpass all men in beauty and virtue, and good fortune shall be his." The Brahman's wife was overjoyed at this tale. However, in the course of time, she gave birth to a snake. All her servants cried, "Throw it away." However, the doting mother picked it up and cared for it lovingly. One day she got upset when watching the wedding of a young couple, saying to her husband, "You treat me with contempt because you are not making any effort at all to arrange a wedding for my dear child." The Brahmin replied, "I would have to go to the depths of hell and beseech Pasuki, the king of snakes, for who else, you fool, would give his daughter in marriage to a snake?" But wives can be very convincing sometimes, and the Brahmin ended up traveling far and wide to seek out a bride. He spent the night in a place of the Naga, or serpent worshippers, and in the morning told his host why he had come. Amazingly, the host had the perfect daughter, and the Brahmin returned home gleefully with the girl and her servants. After an initial shock at the thought of marrying the snake, the girl eventually came around and promised to marry him. She showed the snake respect during the early days, serving him milk and food. But one night the snake left his basket and crept into bed, but the girl thought it was a man and she was terrified, until she realized it really was her husband who had changed shape. The Brahmin had seen everything, and early in the morning, before the snake could creep back into his snakeskin, he stole it and burned it, and never again could the sun take the form of a snake. A story such as this could not be clearer, and it is based upon much older myths from more ancient sources. It is the stark tale of the origin of the hybrid species between mankind and the alien race. True modern scientific genetics can clearly be seen in this very ancient tale. An invisible being descends and impregnates the wife, who goes on to give birth to a serpent child. There is no difference here to the tales of Mary and Joseph and the birth of the one the Gnostics would call the good serpent. There are hundreds more like it across the world, relating to the descent from serpent aliens. There is little wonder when these serpent tribes were spreading their belief around the world before Egypt had even been thought of. Now we have seen the traces of the alien invasion of the shining serpents in the mythology and history of the world. It's time to see if there are any ancient traces of them in artifacts and symbolism. The fact is, once our eyes are opened to the existence of a massive worldwide serpent worship history, we cannot fail to see them. Almost everything about the mythology of the alien serpent race reveals that they were the gods who gave life, and no symbol reveals this more than the Ankh of ancient Egypt. The Ankh is a simple T-cross surmounted by an oval called the Ru, which means quite simply gateway to another world. This enigmatic symbol of Egypt represents eternal life and was often found in the names of pharaohs such as Tutankhamun. The symbol is often depicted being held by a god to a pharaoh, giving him life, or held by a pharaoh to his people, giving them life. This basically set aside the immortals from the mortals, for anyone wearing or carrying the Ankh was one of the genetically different race. The pharaoh was God on earth, and so he held his own symbol of the sun and the serpent to his people. It is the loop, the Ru or gateway of the Ankh, which is held by the immortals to the nostrils. This is the same as the biblical God breathing life into the nostrils of Adam. The Ankh outlived Egyptian domination and was widely used by the Christians as their first cross, but in this symbol holds a clue to the secret of the serpent. Philo said that the Phoenician alphabet are those formed by means of serpents, and adored them as the supreme gods, the rulers of the universe, thus bringing to mind the god Thoth, who again is related to the worship of serpents and who created the alphabet. The rulers of the universe not only gave us life, but also the very alphabet. They taught us how to communicate. Bunsen in the 19th century thought the forms and movements of serpents were employed in the invention of the oldest letters, which represent gods. The most important of these symbols was the Ankh, which, without the loop, becomes the Egyptian taut, the same as the Greek tau, a simple T, a symbol upon which the deity of Jesus would be crucified. The Druids of Northern Europe venerated the tree and the snake by scrawling the tau cross into tree bark. Amongst the modern Freemasons, the means clavis ad thesaurem, a key to treasure, or theca ubi res preciosa, a place where the precious thing is concealed. That precious thing is the secret knowledge of eternal life, the secret of the serpent bloodline. This symbol became the mark or sign which would set the believer aside for saving when the gods returned. In Ezekiel, this is the mark that God will know, the mark on the forehead. The aliens gave a secret symbol for their own kind. This remarkable idea of wearing the Tau cross on the shoulder as a sign would later become part and parcel of the Crusader Templars' markings, the very same Templars who are instigated in the worship of serpents. Anybody who knows about the Da Vinci Code will know about the Templar-linked family of Christ, the Merovingians. They were said to be descended from Jesus and a serpent-fish deity, and again bear a red cross on their shoulder blades. We shall return to the Merovingians soon to unlock the key to the aliens that walk among us today. There are other signs and symbols scattered around the world that reveal the ancient aliens. If we move into the lands of the Celts, we discover more symbolism. Beautiful Celtic knotwork is derived from the images of the snake and the movements of the planets. It is a merging of the beings from the heavens and the heavens themselves. We can see influences of this in the spirals and other serpent shapes, not just in Celtic history, but also upon many of the world's ancient monuments. In Scandinavian literature and stone art, we can also see how the serpent appears, looking remarkably like Celtic knotwork. In Roman and Greek wall paintings, there are running spirals thought to be symbolic of the protective snake. Spirals and carvings of the serpent are seen all over the world, and it is always found to be in association with the serpent worship and strange and bizarre-looking alien-like creatures. It is no surprise that such images of the snake in all its relative forms should be seen on the most ancient of rock art. In the cup and ring marks, there are many images of what appears to be a serpent entering the cup and rings. Some have put this down to a serpent entering a hole, others that it is eating an egg. Nobody is sure. Maybe it reveals a kind of wormhole travel. Thoth was said to be the originator of serpent worship in Phoenicia. He is called a god, and he invented hieroglyphs. Thoth consecrated the species of dragons and serpents, and the Phoenicians and Egyptians followed him in this superstition. This Thoth is a memory of the first group who settled here on Earth and instigated the worship of the serpent after the flood or end of the last ice age 12,000 years ago. Thoth was deified after his death, a time that nobody knows, and given the title the God of Health or Healing. He was the prototype for Aesculapius and identified with Hermes and Mercury. All healers, all wise, all teachers, all saviors, and all associated with the serpent for their powers, and all individuals who could map the stars and movements of time, all with the full superpowers attributed again and again to the ancient aliens. This Thoth is the archetypal alien invader, the memory of the host that came down from the sky and taught mankind. The symbol of them all is the Tau cross, the mark of Cain, the symbol of the ancient alien invaders. The symbol our fabled gods have been sacrificed upon. If you wish to hide a secret, hide it in plain sight. And that is precisely what they did. For thousands of years, this symbol has become a sign of the ultimate secret, the ultimate truth of the origin of human civilization. It has been kept alive by one particular group, the guardians of the secret of the alien bloodline. It all began in Mesopotamia and is alive and well to this day in the bloodline of the royalty of the world. We have seen the history and mythology of the alien serpent past. We have seen the serpentine saviors rise and fall across the world. Today there is one particular savior myth that has crept into popular folklore through various best-selling books, documentaries, and films. The Merovingian dynasty. The Merovingian dynasty has been romantically depicted both by the regional writers in France and international best-selling authors such as Dan Brown. There are tales of mystery and magic, of wisdom and light, and last but not least of all, descent from what we now call God, via his son Jesus and his supposed wife Mary Magdalene. The Merovingians were descended from an ultra-ancient race of fallen angels that spawned the globe, taking wisdom and knowledge with them as the idea of Atlantis sank. It all started with a leader of the Salian Franks known as the Merovec in the 5th century AD. Both he and his son Childeric were great warriors and fought with superhuman strength against the Visigoths, Saxons, and Alemanni. Following Childeric came his son Clovis I, who went on to unite most of Gaul and the Loire and defeated the Roman ruler Syagrius. It was Clovis I who adopted the Roman Catholic religion for his nation. Eventually, by the early 7th century, we end up with the infamous Dagobert II, also known as Dragobert, coming from the words dragon and Bert, which in turn come from Bara or Para, which means pharaoh. So Dagobert simply means king or pharaoh of the dragons. He is the culmination of the serpent holy and royal bloodline. Dagobert is said to have visited the serpent-worshipping brethren in Ireland. Still today, Masons worship the head or skull of Dagobert, calling it Mahomet. It is kept in the Covenant of the Black Sisters at Mons. The cup that was formed to hold the skull was made into the shape of a chalice. Hence we have the head of the dragon pharaoh in the chalice, a new version of the cup of the Agatha daemon, the good serpent. But who is Dagobert, and where did he come from? What makes him so important that his skull should be turned into a grail and then worshipped by the Masons, the modern Templars? Dagobert II was a French king from the supposed Grail Merovingian bloodline and was the last of the Merovingian kings to hold the title of Holy Roman Emperor. These Merovingians are said to be a dynasty of Frankish priest kings with magical powers, derived from their long red hair and the special birthmark between their shoulders of a red cross. Obviously, the Christians spread rumors of witchcraft and various other misdemeanors because Dagobert was seen as a threat. After several years spent away from his Frankish kingdom, Dagobert returned from Ireland in 679. Trouble set in, and it ended with the death of Dagobert and the rise of a new royal bloodline. The Catholics had wiped out the troublesome Merovingians once and for all. Or did they? The truth is that the Merovingian bloodline was already deeply rooted in the bloodline of the royalty in Europe, and it could not be erased. The ancient alien blood coursed through their veins, and they remain to this day the most powerful families on the planet. The Merovingians connected etymologically with the snake, as well as ritualistically, where simply descendants of the serpent bloodline, the royal line descended from serpent alien invaders who spread out across the globe in India and China, in Britain and America. The original and most fabled Merovec is named after the sacred bull of the ancient Greeks, Mero. The ultimate secret held sacred by the Greeks was this: the bull has begotten a serpent, and the serpent a bull. The two are interchangeable. The bull is symbolized by the Tau cross, and so too is the serpent. It was this King Merovec, the first in the line of Merovingian kings, who was said to have been spawned by the great sea bull Kinator. This is a giant sea monster with a bull head. The Mer part of the Merovi becomes obvious in that Mer means sea. He is the king bull of the sea, the sun in Taurus, which gives us a special place in time, the time of the original ancient alien invasion. This bull king goes back a very long way in history, right back to the days of Mesopotamia and kings such as Sargon and Menes. But this goes back yet further to an association between these kings and their legendary genesis from ancient sea-born gods such as Oannes and Dagon, who were serpent gods or aliens. These myths are those of invading serpent aliens and migrating snake cults coming into the land, bringing with them all the skills associated with the coming of these ancient gods, such as metallurgy, architecture, and medicine. These are the same as the biblical Leviathan, the great serpent of ages past, who encircled the world as the Ouroboros, the symbol of immortality and eternity of control over the globe. This is the same symbol which attracts the phrase, "My end is my beginning," like the words placed into the mouth of Christ, "I am the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega." In fact, the Christians of later times went on to use the image of the Ouroboros as a symbol for the Alpha and Omega elements of their Christian faith. The Levites, of course, derived their name from this Leviathan, their name meaning sons of the Leviathan. They were the sons of the serpent rulers of ancient times. According to Babylonian legend, in the beginning there was neither land, gods, nor men. There were only aliens known as Tiamat and Apsu. Tiamat was the female and the spirit of salt water and primal chaos, and Apsu the male, the spirit of fresh water and void. Tiamat is depicted with scales and a serpentine body and legs with horns on her head. The union of these two gods produced all the other gods, including the greatest among them, Kinegu. This later became the Kinator, the progenitor of the Merovingians. Their bloodline stretched back to the end of the age of Taurus. This, for the first time, gives us actual dates for the ancient alien invasion, and amazingly, it fits perfectly with all that we have discovered in their origin in the dawn of Mesopotamian civilization. 5000 to 4000 BC. Over thousands of years and across hundreds of cultures, the history of this ancient invasion by the great shining ones from the heavens altered and became legend and myth. Much of it turned into the great religions of the planet. But hidden in these stories is the real, literal truth of an invasion of planet Earth by beings so strange that we called them serpents. Ancient man left cave paintings and tales of their coming across the world. The great guardians of the Shining Ones, known as the Watchers, mated with human females and a hybrid bloodline was born. It became the bloodline of the rulers of our globe and was protected and kept secret. Every now and then the secret would emerge into popular mythology with people such as the Merovingians and tales of superhuman powers. Up until around 5000 BC, we know that mankind had no great civilizations. It had been this way for millennia. Then suddenly, at the very time we know as the Age of Taurus, at the very period that our remaining texts tell us the Shining Ones came and taught humanity, it all changed. Suddenly, civilization erupted. The Sumerians migrated to Mesopotamia, towards something that seemed to attract them. This is the period of tales of a great cataclysm, what we know as the Flood. Judgment from above. The gods were angry and dealt humanity a cruel blow. These tales are worldwide. Civilization erupted, and great learning spread far and wide. The all-powerful symbol of the swastika emerged, which is in reality 4 serpents overlapping. Serpent rock art appears all over the world. A great and powerful image of a horned god now begins to find itself everywhere. This is the Lord of the Animals, the image of the one who had all knowledge. In the Bible, he would become the one we know as Moses, the wielder of the serpent staff, the teacher of his people. The one who would raise up the brazen serpent in the wilderness to protect his special people from other serpents. This is the period that Enoch tells us was the time of war between those who had come down from the sky, the angels, the Nephilim, the Shining Ones. These were the great shining serpents who had magical flaming swords and wheel-like or disc-like ships that flew around the sky. As the scribe of the Shining Ones, Enoch himself was shielded from death and taken away by the aliens to live out his days in heaven. Christians today know him as the man who walked with God, and the reason is simple. God came down to earth and walked on our soil, spoke with Enoch, and then returned. Whatever this means, it does reveal that ancient man witnessed something remarkable. In truth, this was the period of the ancient invasion of planet Earth by the shining race of serpents who came from the sky. Our ancestors worshipped them for their amazing power, and yet, in our modern scientific age, we can now see things more clearly. These were not angels or messengers of light. These were not great Greek deities sat on high and issuing commands. They were not the many-faced Hindu or Egyptian gods. These were beings from another planet who came here with superior technology. They helped mankind start civilization, they bred with us, and they fought with each other. Most, we are told, left. But the hybrid race remained among us as special people. And now, with every passing day, NASA tells us that they have discovered yet another Earth-like planet that could sustain life. They find ancient rivers and lakes on Mars, and even fatty acids within the Martian soil. They alter their equations on the existence of alien life on a weekly basis. Even they are growing more and more aware that soon they will discover something special. The question is, will we awaken the ancient invaders, and will they return, if they're not already here?